Hello and welcome to the Built for Growth podcast. Oh, today we are in for a treat. I had Dr. Will Cole on the podcast today, and I think as a functional medicine specialist, his desire to really help people find root cause solutions to root cause problems and his desire to just help. I love it when people genuinely it fills their cup to help people. And I think that Dr. Will is absolutely one of those people. We talked about a plethora of things. Not only does he have 4 books out too, I just want to throw that out there. We do go over that in the podcast, but we discussed gut health, something I haven't really dove into in this podcast, but it goes without saying how important gut health is. The gut-brain connection. Our body follows our brain, and our brain has a great tie-in to our gut. Our gut is important, and it is our immune system as well. So we talked about autoimmune diseases, and we dove a little bit into hormones, and we also started with where do you start? Like, what's the low-hanging fruit? How can people make meaningful change in their life? And we also dove into the four most inflammatory foods. So I think it's a great kicking off point, but also gives a ton of great information no matter where you are at in your health journey. I'm sure that you are going to learn something new in this podcast. I know that I did, and I love this episode, and I can't wait to share it with you. So as always, thanks for listening. So, Will, I'm so excited to jump into a bit of gut health today. I haven't really talked about it a lot, and I know it's so important. It is just such a vital part of our health and our integrity and our longevity, and I think even performance. But
100%.
We don't always pay attention to what's going on in the gut, and especially I think with things like antibiotics or certain medications. We just take these things, and it's not really. It's not widespread knowledge that these things are damaging to us and our overall health in any way. So can we just dive in on that?
Oh my gosh, it's my love language. If I'm not talking about gut health or with telehealth consults, if I'm not bringing up poop within 5 minutes, I've failed.
Well, we've done it right then. I think we're under 60 seconds, so we're good.
Yeah, that's a good sign of a great conversation. Just stay tuned, people. Yeah, so gut health. Where do I begin?
I know. Where do we start? Yeah, tell me about it.
Let's go way back. Let's go way back, right, to every baby. All of us, we were all babies. The gut and brain are actually formed from the same fetal tissue. So when babies are growing in their mother's womb, the gut and brain are coming from that same origin.
I did not know that.
Yeah, wild, right? And if you think about it, even on a basic resemblance standpoint, the intestines kind of even resemble the brain. And 95% of serotonin, our happy neurotransmitter, is made and stored in the gut. 50% of dopamine, our pleasure neurotransmitter, is made and stored in the gut. They are inextricably linked, the gut and the brain, for the rest of our lives through what's known as the gut-brain axis, the connection between the gut and the brain. That's why researchers, for all these reasons and more, researchers refer to the gut as the second brain. And there's a lot of research looking at this sort of connection, this bidirectional relationship, how one impacts the other, and bidirectionally. And your gut's also home to 75% of the immune system. Inflammation is a product of the immune system. So you can't have a conversation, a meaningful one, about inflammation and things that are dysregulating inflammation without looking at where the predominance of the immune system resides, which is in the gastrointestinal system. So it's profoundly important, not just from an actual digestive health standpoint, which we can maybe go into the myths of what that even means, of people to check in with their digestive health. But it's so much more. Gut health is so much more than digestive health. It impacts our mood. It impacts our hormones. 20% of your thyroid hormone is converted from T4 to T3, activating the thyroid hormone in the gut. You have to have a healthy gut to have healthy thyroid hormones. And as I mentioned, any inflammatory problem, it has a lot of them have sort of root ties to underlying gut problems. So said another way, you don't have to have extreme digestive symptoms to have underlying gut components to why you feel the way that you do.
Do you think most people do?
I think most people do to varying degrees. At the very conservatively, it's at least a piece of the puzzle for most people that aren't thriving. So if you have brain fog, fatigue, anxiety, depression, there's a whole field of research called the cytokine model of cognitive function. Cytokines are pro-inflammatory cells. So it's researchers looking at how does inflammation, which most of it begins in the gut, how does inflammation impact how the brain works? And a big part of my work is sort of allowing people or giving people this information so they can realize, oh, wow, because we'll oftentimes separate mental health from physical health. That's a mental health issue. That's certainly how conventional medicine treats it. It's never measured. None of this stuff is measured. It's just this abstract chemical imbalance. No labs are done, and they're given these prescription medications. And, there's a lot of, we can get into the weeds on that.
Mixed results.
Yeah, mixed results, right. And why do they have the problem in the first place?
Right.
For most people, it's not a SSRI deficiency. So what's actually going on? And researchers are looking at the gut, impacting their mood, impacting their hormones, impacting their nervous system, and impacting inflammation, which will impact, as somebody can have gut inflammation, they can have neuroinflammation or nervous system inflammation. But then you look at autoimmune conditions. I mean, it's 50 plus million Americans have an autoimmune disease.
I think 80% of it is women.
Women, yeah. And there's different reasons for that too. But I mean, and then millions more are somewhere on this autoimmune inflammation spectrum. So yeah, to varying degrees, but it exists on a spectrum, mild symptoms to severe. But you can look at modernity, people that you love around you. It would be hard to find someone not impacted that to some degree, even mildly. And this isn't about fear-mongering. This isn't about, looking for problems where there aren't any. It's just even if you have a chronic health problem or you're just not thriving, what are the pieces to your puzzle that's keeping you back from living the life that God created you for? And I think that's the question at hand.
What about serotonin? Because is that something I hear that's created in the gut? And it's kind of like a mood-lifting...
Yeah, 95% of it's made in the gut. And the way that we think of it, because it's made in most of serotonin is made in the gut, stored in the gut, but it's actually doesn't pass through the blood-brain barrier as science understands it. It's working on GI motility, the movement of the gut, and it's communicating to the brain through the vagus nerve. So it's largely that's crosstalk between the gut and the brain and the brain and the gut is happening through the sort of modulations, innervation of the enteric nervous system and the vagus nerve, communications. But you need healthy neurotransmitter, and you need healthy gut motility and healthy gut microbiome diversity to have optimal serotonin. But serotonin is, yes, we think of it as mood, right? But it is also a precursor for melatonin, sort of the sleepy time neurotransmitter, if you will. And if someone has poor sleep-wake cycle, poor REM, deep sleep, poor heart rate variability, we have to look at this connection here, because if there's a depletion of the serotonin, you're going to have potentially the conversion to melatonin is going to be weak as well.
It makes a lot of sense. I think even if you think about the body physically, if we were going to draw an analogy, that sometimes like if you get like scoliosis or you have like a problem on one side of the body, a lot of times the other side is either like, trying to make up for it, or is out of balance and is potentially what's actually causing the one that's symptomatic.
100%. The compensatory mechanism. That's absolutely it. And that's why people, when I'm initially talking to a telehealth patient, we're looking over their health history, their labs, and then I start asking about these maybe seemingly obscure, like if they're coming in for brain fog, they could be like, why are you asking me how many times I go to the bathroom in a day? Or why are you asking me about my childhood trauma? Like the body's interconnected. So sort of relegate it and silo it as like, okay, if it's a brain issue or a hormone problem, you're just going to be talking about that. You'd be missing a lot of different variables because the body's interconnected. And you could be having these more what we would call upstream root issues that are really causing the downstream ripple effect. So hormones are actually a good example of that. It's like, okay, there's a time and place for hormone replacement therapy. It could be a game changer for people who need it. But if you're not perimenopausal, postmenopausal, if you're like in your 20s, 30s, even 40s, even teenagers we see that have irregular periods, painful periods, if you have other symptoms of fertility issues, other hormonal imbalance symptoms, well, what's going on here? And you can take hormone replacement therapy, and it may be a tool within the toolbox, but why do you have this problem in the first place? Typically, hormones are a compensatory mechanism, where there is something upstream that's causing that imbalance or deficiency or dysregulation going on here. So yeah, you cannot the body doesn't, said better way, I guess, would be symptoms don't happen in a vacuum. There's something going on.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about some of the heavy hitters that could cause you to have gut issues. Are there certain things, like maybe if you've ever taken, I think a course of antibiotics or something like that, or medications or other things, or even maybe things that you can like kind of just look out for? I mean, obviously sometimes you're going to have to take medications, surgeries happen, or, you just got to get through like a hard day. Maybe you've got a headache and that's just the day you've got to take it. Normally you don't, but you try not to. Or maybe you're taking an ibuprofen every day and you don't know that it could be impacting your gut. So what are some things that you see that impact gut health?
Well, for health histories, like we go way back to in utero, like what was your mom's pregnancy with you like? And then how were you born? Were you born naturally, vaginally, or C-section? What was the state of your birth? Do you know? And sometimes people don't know this information. Sometimes their parents aren't there. Sometimes their parents never talked about this stuff. But if we know, the more information we have, the better context we have to the origins of this gut garden. There's trillions of bacteria in our gut. So I guess the microbiome, for people that don't know, microbiome, the small life, depending on the study that you reference, we have upwards of 100 trillion bacteria in our gut. And to put that in context, we have only about 30 trillion human cells. So I am, like we all are, exponentially more bacteria than human. We're sort of the sophisticated host for the microbiome. And I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh, yeah.
Krang, the villain in the old cartoon version of it, was like this brain inside of this robotic thing. We're all kind of like Krangs. If you're younger or older than me, please just Google it afterwards. But Krang is a good symbolic view of this. I mean, researchers say it's symbiotic. Like we need the microbiome, all this microbiome metropolis, all the good bacteria, yeast and fungus, etc. But I think we need it more than it needs us. Like it's so much part of our brain and our mood and everything. So it is profoundly important. I got on a tangent. What was your?
Where do you even think that? Yeah, you were talking about
the biggest
like
assaulters.
The assaulters. Yeah. Or I mean, I like all of it. I think the pros and the cons. I want to move into the pros. But you brought up something interesting about birth, and I do think that our experiences begin to formulate our responses and our learned responses and our natural responses the moment that we can begin to interpret those things. And I do think that foundationally, just because we don't remember it consciously, we have a subconscious, right? And we have the way that our body works. And if a baby was born very potentially stressfully, or had to like have something squeezing its head, or pull, like pain was the first experience. Okay, maybe the pain response or the nervousness that might happen, which then causes hormonal cascades of different things, that the way that this baby is just going to begin interpreting this environment, which there's just so many millions of ways that this could potentially play out. But I think that it does begin very early and is setting these precursors and potentially our epigenetic dispositions of what things we're going to kind of lean into. Are we going to be more of a nervous, stressy person, or are we going to be relaxed? Could that boil down to our first interpretations of life? And I mean, it begs to ask the question at the very least. But I think my question here, what really was going to be, is when a baby is born, do they have that many gut bacteria, and where are they getting that from?
Yeah, they're getting it from their mom. So the first sort of heirloom that we get is from the birthing process. So it's the sort of inoculation of the microbiome. Are you getting it through the vaginal canal or through C-section? And there's studies that show that C-section babies, although can be life-saving for mom and baby. I'm not against C-sections, but the microbiome is different. We have to look at this ancestral mismatch that humans would have been one way for thousands and thousands of years, generations, but yet, or we've just, this sort of mismatch, this chasm between genetics and epigenetics should be looked at. And it's very, very multifaceted. It's not just C-sections, but that is the beginning stage of what type of microbiome you're going to get. You're going to get different bacteria depending on how you're born. And then, are you breastfed or not breastfed? How long were you breastfed? What was the health status of your mom? And then it's what these early foods. So there's studies that show like the first few years, I think the first 3 years researchers have looked at of this whole process, plus these early days of how you were fed, are significantly foundational to this gut garden, all these trillions of bacteria. But that's constantly and dynamically being influenced even beyond that. While these maybe foundational things were built over the first 3 years, but then it's okay. Did you get lots of strep throat ear infections because of maybe the first three years? And were you put on antibiotics a lot reoccurringly? And then we have to look at the mental, emotional, even spiritual things. I mean, I have every telehealth patient fill out what's called an ACE score, an adverse childhood experiences. So it's looking at really heavy stuff like sexual trauma growing up, physical abuse growing up, neglect growing up, substance abuse in the home, your parents' relationship. Studies show that the higher your ACE score, the more likely you're to have these autoimmune, inflammatory, hormonal, metabolic, and of course mental health issues. But it's over the course of time, it's being influenced in many ways. It just becomes less, mutable. Like the first years of someone's life is really important. But and then people can hear me talk about this and be like, oh man, I'm screwed. Like my parents knew nothing. Like
I'm thinking I was born by cesarean. I was bottle fed, like, okay.
Yeah. But, look, you have to know what you're dealing with to do something about it. So these are things that you have agency over.
Yeah, of course.
It might be more difficult than if, you had the perfect everything, but who had the perfect everything?
Right.
And it's like, your parents did the best they could, maybe. Most of our parents did the best they could with the information they had at the time. And these things were not discussed.
And it's like, what can we do about it now?
What
Information is
today?
power.
It's water under the bridge. What can you do now? I see people up against the most seemingly insurmountable things, like the highest ACE score, the worst childhood trauma, the worst childhood way that they were fed. They had no choice on that, but they still are pictures of health and have so much amazing things. So yeah, you may have a higher hill to climb. Some people have higher hills than others, but you can climb that hill. And don't use it as a form of man, I'm screwed. I'm going to give up and just have my fast food and call it a day. No, you have to. Let's move in the positive direction. So it's, in short, the biggest assaulters are the foods we're eating or the foods we're not eating. It's environmental toxins. It's chronic stress, unresolved trauma. It's biotoxins like bacteria, virus, mold that can impact the microbiome and the immune system at large. It's an entourage effect of a lot of different variables, but it's all subject to bioindividuality. So some people have big proverbial buckets. Some people have smaller proverbial buckets. That's your genetic component of how much stress can your body handle. And you can't change the bucket, but you can change what you put in that bucket. And what goes in the bucket are the things I just mentioned: stress, trauma, environmental toxins, foods that don't love you back. And we have to work over understanding the genetic component, because that's about, depending on who you're talking about a third of the puzzle is genetics. Mm-hmm. You can't change that. But 2/3 is epigenetics. 2/3 is what you fill that bucket up with. And you have a lot of agency over that, of emptying that proverbial bucket over time. So that tipping point, those symptoms, those flare-ups, you not living a thriving life can come down. And you have wiggle room, you have resilience. Resilience building is a significant part of my work. So you don't have to live on these sort of strict protocols or, you have to eat this way to maintain your goals. You actually have some wiggle room like our great-grandparents had. They could just kind of live life and not be thinking about this stuff because they were exposed to less stuff. But when we empty that bucket, we have that grace as well.
What do you think about antibiotics? I know that they're important and, we need to take them sometimes. But what's going on when we do take them?
It obviously game changer to humanity as a whole when used appropriately. But we in humanity like to overcorrect and overdo things and throw out antibiotics and many other examples of this within life to throw it out very flippantly, without labs, without context. It may be a virus. Why are you even giving kids antibiotics for viral infections? That's not how it works. It's not an antiviral. So it's just, we've overcorrected so much. And if it was just antibiotics, maybe, there's a lot of studies that show, just one round of antibiotics, depending on the dose and the type of antibiotic, can really do a number on the bacterial diversity of the gut, really can make it difficult for the microbiome to rebound. Now, is it saving somebody's life? Then you have to weigh the cost benefit analysis there. But if you don't need it, and if it's the first round and they haven't even talked about improving your gut health, improving your immune system resilience, improving metabolic flexibility, so you don't maybe have constant colds and constant sick issues. If you're sick a lot, why? So maybe the antibiotics are needed in these sort of circumstances of saving somebody's life or turning the corner. It's when it's done appropriately, it's an amazing blessing. But it's just the flippant use of things like this can really decimate the gut microbiome and can have a lot of long-term consequences, especially when somebody's younger.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's one of those things that the litmus test is what's the most effective option that causes the least amount of side effects.
Right.
And I wish like there were other things in the conventional model, like talking about other things you can do to support your immune system, but yeah, it's not discussed at all. No, take this antibiotic.
Right.
See you later. Okay, what?
And I went to the dentist, and it's common practice to take the antibiotic just in case. Like you start it before you do your whatever work you're getting done or whatnot. And I'm not recommending this. This is just my personal story because I'm a bit wild and a little bit of a rebel. And, some people slightly say that I could categorize as, a little crazy. But
little crunchy?
a little crunchy. I'm definitely crunchy. I will proudly embrace that one. A little wild, too, picking MMA for a career.
No.
Obviously, I have to have some screws loose. But, so I'm not recommending this. But I will say that what I did was I didn't take the antibiotic, and I was fine. I also am not I don't want to get too much into vaccines, but I'm just sharing my mentality on this is that I've started to realize that there is more things that I can do to be socially responsible and also responsible for myself and my kids, like improve the function of our immune systems to be able to combat sicknesses ourselves. And so I guess I'm taking a little bit more of a different or like a headstrong.
Cautionary
approach. And it's headstrong, It's definitely not conforming. It's not saying like, okay, well, just because the doctor says like, I want to know why.
Yeah.
I want to be able to ask the question. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I really want to be able to think for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll take risks. One time I also chopped up garlic. I had I felt like a tooth infection coming on, and I chopped up garlic and I packed it around my gums, and I did that for like a week.
Yeah.
And I had wonderful breath. Everybody loved it.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't have it in my mouth all day, but I would do it for
in your mouth.
Yeah, like 10 minutes. And it would burn. Maybe I couldn't even do it for quite. And then I would just eat the garlic after, I had chopped it.
Love it.
It went away.
Yeah.
So,
why not more of those sort of traditional, things that you can support your health? And there's many things you can do. It's just, we're upside down in sort of our culture when it comes to chronic health issues. It's just we don't talk about these things.
Yeah.
We are now more than ever before in our lifetime. But I think it's just, there's nothing new under the sun. This is just sort of remembering of what our ancestors would have done. And I love the both and approach of like, okay, amazing advancements in modern medicine, but we've sort of created these silos and forgot the roots of which every doctor takes the Hippocratic oath. Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, said all disease begins in the gut. Hippocrates said, let food be thy medicine and medicine thy food. So for them to call you and people like you and I, like woo-woo or fringe or crunchy or all these pejoratives, quacks, take it up with Hippocrates.
Yeah. No, it's so good. I love what you're saying here. Let's talk about, I did have one question. What happens if the gut microbiome gets very narrow or you start losing a ton of your good gut bacteria? I mean, what happens?
Well, it's the researchers would look at some of these things as seminal events to chronic health problems. Like Alessia Fasano, amazing researchers, have been looking at the microbiome health for the past over 10 years, and on the exact time, my whole career, they've been looking at this for the past 16 years, it really is the hallmark, almost precondition some of these researchers consider as when you've lost bacterial diversity, meaning that there's less good bugs, good probiotics in your gut. And when that happens, this gut garden, this microbiome metropolis, there's different neighborhoods, these sort of colony-forming units, these different types of bacteria, and each one have their own strong suit. They have their own ability, or they're associated in the scientific literature with different aspects of vibrant, robust human health. But when you've lost those neighborhoods, that microbiome economy is going to be thrown off. That workforce isn't going to be there. So there's a lot of, I call them weeds, like proverbial weeds that can overgrow in this gut garden, or to use the economy or society analogy, these sort of gangs can kind of take over because the checks and balances, the regulatory system of the microbiome is off. It's going to shift the microbiome economy. And these are opportunistic and pathogenic bacteria. A lot of people have bacterial overgrowths, things like SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which is a leading cause of IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, chronic constipation, bloating, acid reflux, GERD. I mean, how many people have those issues? And it's so many. I mean, but it's a loss of that balance. And then what will that can cause yeast and fungal overgrowth as well, the candida overgrowth, what they call SIFO, small intestinal fungal overgrowth. All of these bacteria, yeast and fungus, they're normal parts of the microbiome. Or for the yeast and fungus, they call it the mycobiome, the beneficial yeast. These things aren't bad. God made them. It's just when you have a lack of balance, that Goldilocks principle, homeostasis, not too low, not too low, not too high, not too low, but just right. And that's what happens. And what happens when all that stuff happens, you've lost that balance, you can start increasing intestinal permeability. Things are passing through the gut because that gut barrier is stressed out too, because these bacteria are higher in what are called lipopolysaccharides, these bacterial toxins that in small amounts are fine, but in high amounts it's really stressful to the immune system, and it can increase these proteins called occludin and zonulin, which are these gut gatekeepers. The cell lining of the gut lining is only one cell thick. It's very thin. So when you start having these increased bacterial toxins, LPS, things are passing through the gut that shouldn't be able to pass through the gut, which are the bacterial toxins and undigested food proteins.
What does that actually mean when they say pass through the gut? So are you talking about like you were in the intestines and food or toxins are seeping outside of the intestines, like into the
bloodstream?
Okay.
Yeah, into the bloodstream. So that is the seminal event. That was my long-winded way of saying that is what they call leaky gut syndrome or increased intestinal permeability. So that's getting into the bloodstream, undigested food proteins, bacterial toxins. And we measure these things on labs. So this isn't just theoretical. You can measure these food antibodies, these lipopolysaccharides antibodies, and that is what researchers that will look at what is the precondition or at least a piece of the puzzle to metabolic problems, hormonal problems, mental health issues. All of this stuff is kind of connected to this major issue, going back to what Hippocrates said, all disease begins in the gut. I don't know how he knew it. He didn't have randomized controlled trials, but that's why he's the father.
Common sense, though.
He had common sense, exactly, and seen thousands of people anecdotally. What science actually was, he didn't have the hubris of the sort of orthodoxy today. He just saw, wow, when this happened, it created this. Wild thought that common sense prevailed.
Yeah,
but
that what you eat affects you.
Yeah, but he saw it. And now science is catching up with antiquity. Science is catching up with good old Hippocrates that, all disease does begin in the gut, at least to some degree. If not cause, it's certainly an exacerbator, a piece of the puzzle to chronic health problems. So it's very much important. So when you've lost that cascade, as you said, will go and can manifest in different ways for different people based on their own genetics and what system's being impacted.
So you mentioned a blood test, so you can test and see if these things are present in the blood, these toxins or whatnot. But are there other ways that you're testing of like the diversity of the gut microbiome? How does that work?
Yeah, it's a stool test. It looks like a fry dish, but you're not putting fries in there. This is like, please don't. And don't be that crunchy that you're recycling and reusing that afterwards. But it's a stool sample, and you're sending it to the lab, and then we look at the results. And we're looking at good bacteria, any opportunistic or pathogenic bacteria, these higher ones that are higher in lipopolysaccharides. And we're looking at intestinal permeability markers. We are looking at inflammation in the gut, these calprotectin, lysozyme, these immune markers, something called beta-glucuronidase. We are looking at digestion and absorption because we aren't just we are what we eat, we are what we take in, but we are more accurately, we are what we absorb. And if your body's not absorbing nutrients, you could be eating the best foods, supplementing, and your maybe nutrient panels aren't looking great. You're not getting the most out of those nutrient-dense foods you're trying to eat. So digging deeper and dealing with improving the resilience of your gut health is profoundly important from a nutrient status and how that impacts every system
So
of the body.
microbiome, when it's more diverse and more balanced, is actually going to help you absorb the nutrition from your food better?
Oh, yeah. And I see so many people, most of our patients, when they're meeting us, they are eating better than most Americans. They are supplementing with things that make sense in theory. But you look at their labs and their nutrients are still low, like their magnesium, vitamin D, iron levels extremely low. Oftentimes for people, selenium, iodine, these markers are not optimal. And why is that? Well, there's several reasons potentially, but part of it is that, at least a common one that I see, is their gut resilience isn't great. And their digestive absorption ability isn't where we want it to be. So when you work on that, then you don't necessarily even need to supplement with all of this stuff. You can just get it through foods primarily. Yeah. Maybe or even lower the dosage of the supplementation. Or more targeted supplement. Exactly. Right. Go off the things that are you're getting through food. Yeah.
What about, I wasn't planning on asking this, but people who have gone through cancer treatments, they're not on antibiotics, correct? No.
They can be. They can be, yeah.
But that type of radiation, are they going to typically have their gut impact?
Oh, very much so, yeah. Digestive issues after conventional cancer treatments are extremely common. And we're meeting people around that time where they've kind of gone through the conventional route they needed to, for their cancer journey, but they're looking at this both and not either or approach and okay, I'm out of the woods now, but my gut's a wreck now. My fatigue, my brain fog is a wreck right now. What do I need to start to rebalance and sort of heal from even the treatment itself, which can be really decimating to the gut microbiome?
Right. Okay. So I know a few people, I think we all do, quite a few people that have come out of cancer, and the reoccurrence of cancer is high. Like once you've had it, you are in a higher category to have cancer again. But the way that I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, or please elaborate. I would love for you to elaborate on this. But a lot of preventing cancer inside of our own body, when our body is trying to be our best doctor, is having a robust immune system. Correct? And if your immune system has then been suppressed because the gut has been decimated through, maybe what was necessary, medications or any of the things that or food, whatever it was, cancer, antibiotics. Wouldn't you think it would just be imperative to really focus on healing the gut at that point?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's missing the mark when it's how we are so compartmentalized. You see the oncologist, you see the gastroenterologist, you see the rheumatologist, you see these different specialists. That's not how the body works. So functional medicine attempts to be this sort of clinical quarterback in a way where you're just kind of saying, what are the most effective tools? And the body is interconnected. And yeah, maybe these individual studies or types of doctors are needed. But ultimately, from a human health standpoint, they're not realizing the interconnectedness of it all. And that's why there's a growing number of conventional systems that have, like the Cleveland Clinic, for example, world-class mainstream institution. They have a functional medicine center there. Many mainstream hospitals and medical systems, have functional medicine and integrated medicine.
This is more new? This is more of a new concept?
Yeah, in the past decade, but it's still, look, they're scratching the surface. There's so many people going through health problems, but yeah, it's new. And then I'm not within that system. I'm in an independent sort of telehealth world. But what I hear from the doctors in there, even then, it's still not fully integrated like the way it should, but it's better than it used to be.
Okay.
And there's many other integrative functional medicine longevity centers, if you will, that marry conventional treatments for things like cancer or autoimmune conditions with these other things that we're talking about, because they see exactly what you said. It's insane for us to be like, well, here's radiation and chemo and see you later. Or maybe let's talk about another thing, autoimmune conditions. Here's that steroid or immunosuppressant, see you later. You're taking potentially one piece of the puzzle, but that either or, and then on top of the either or, the tribalism, and I think the decades of the delegitimization of anything other than the orthodoxy in the medical industrial complex has really hurt the American people. And it's hurt Western civilization as a whole, because there has been a very effective campaign over the 20th century and even now of silencing any doctor or any healer, any healthcare practitioner that dared to remember where we came from, that dared to look at food as medicine, to dare to think outside the box. And you said, be a little headstrong and rebellious. Like, our ancestors would just call it life, and now we're the fringe people, right? It's just like, it's upside down. It's Orwellian upside down, to say the least, because what we're talking about, these things that we're talking about, is common sense. And we've lost common sense.
Yeah.
But
it's intuition as well.
Exactly.
We need to learn to remember to learn to listen to ourselves.
Right. And, you know, we live in such a blessed time that there are more and more studies talking about this stuff. This is not so fringe. You can just go on PubMed and see all the stuff we're talking about here.
But it's still not common practice. I mean, it's not widely spread.
It's not, because it takes years to kind of trickle down. Plus, there's very vested interests to keep it one way. But I don't need randomized control trials. I like randomized control trials. I like epidemiological studies, but I don't need them to see somebody's labs improve on a day-to-day basis. I don't need RCTs to see somebody's life be regained. And that's where common sense is just like, no, I see what I know what helps people on a daily basis, and where I'm happy about the science looking at what we're doing, but I don't need it to just see what works.
What does help people on a daily basis? Because I bet you there are a lot of people out there that go, you know, yeah, I've had antibiotics, but, you know, I drink kombucha. I have sauerkraut on occasion. I eat fermented food. I know a little bit more about this than most. I'll throw myself in that category.
Yeah.
I make my own fermented fruit water. I take pineapple and honey, and I, submerge it, and I keep it under the water, and I let it get bubbly and fermented. I bottle it up and it's like a soda, but it's so healthy, and it's amazing. Yeah, and my kids like it, because it's carbonated. It's lovely and it's so easy. So I'm like, I like to think, we eat yogurt and kefir. I like to think that we are, helping our immune system and the robustness of our microbiome. But does it work the same for everybody? And is it as simple as just eating more probiotic or prebiotic-rich foods?
It can be as simple. Back to the sort of earlier health history, like, what's somebody's health status today? Where are they at? What's their starting point when we're talking, when we're meeting? Like, what are you going through right now? And for some people, it's subtle changes. They just add in more fermented foods, prebiotics, probiotics, postbiotics. Like, your body many people's body is amazingly resilient and can bounce back with some minor changes of just decreasing the foods that don't love you back, increasing the ones that do, and maybe do some tweaks on like foods to focus on, like nutrient-dense, specific, gut-friendly foods. Maybe some bone broth or soups and stews or fermented foods or whatever. God bless you if that's all that it is. I would say it starts with looking at, as we started this conversation, looking at bowel movements and pooping. Are you going 2 to 3 snakes a day, as we call it, Bristol chart?
Like, should it be 2 to 3? I thought 1 to 2.
Well, I'm an overachiever. 2 to 3, can we just open up 1 to 3? It depends on how much you're eating and your activity level and all of that other stuff. But 1 to 3, I think, could be a good range. 2 would be the sweet spot for most people from a detox standpoint.
2 poops a day. I don't think that's happening for most people.
Okay, it's not happening for most people. I can attest that. As someone I talked about poop all day long. But just because something's common doesn't necessarily make it normal. Like, just because it's, chronic health problems are common. It's not normal.
Okay, but like, why would you need to poop twice a day? Like, is it a speed? Is it like the efficiency of your
nervous system?
Okay.
Yeah, so I agree with you in the sense of there's 2 things going on here, and they are interconnected. But microbiome diversity, which impacts GI motility and bowel movements and all of that, but also a lot of people are stressed. A lot of people are in varying degrees of fight or flight stressed state. And we all talk about it.
Oh, that slows down your digestive system, doesn't it? Because it mobilizes you to run. Yeah,
exactly. Because your body, that sympathetic fight or flight freeze fawn response is overactive. That's slowing down. Like, from a nature, like, mechanistic standpoint, you weren't thinking about going to the bathroom whenever you are in that stress state. Like, you were surviving. But the parasympathetic, the resting, digesting aspect is weak, or what they call poor vagal tone. most people have a weak vagus nerve. And we're in Vegas right now, but it's spelled differently. I didn't plan that. But VAGUS instead of VG. How do you spell VAGAS? Vegas?
Yeah,
Las Vegas,
Vegas.
yeah. But Vegas comes from the root word, the vagus nerve, not Las Vegas, comes from the root word, the wanderer. It's the largest cranial nerve in the body. And it's weak. It's not toned. So you need to train that. So you could even have like really decent microbiome diversity, like you're saying. Like you guys eat clean.
What? You can train your nerve to be stronger?
Yes.
What are you talking
I'm
about
glad
right now?
we're
This
getting
is
into
crazy.
this.
Okay, please enlighten me.
So maybe
I like working out, but this doesn't. I've never.
no, this is
never
a
thought about
different type of
strengthening my
workout.
nerves.
This is a
Okay.
nervous system somatic workout, and that's part of gut health, and it's also part of mental health. So you could having the kombucha, having the kefir, having the sauerkraut or kimchi, whatever. You're eating clean. You're having bone broth. You're not having lots of inflammatory foods. All good for your gut health. But you could still be serving your body a big slice of stress every day, or not dealt with that unresolved trauma and having a serving of that every day. And that's living in your body just as much as a food that didn't love you back or an environmental toxin. So for all those health conscious people out there, you have to have a both and approach with this as well, of like dealing with the gut and the feelings, because the feelings part, the mental, emotional, spiritual stuff, is just as influential as the the physiological parts. So there's many ways to do this. And look, improving gut health with food and nutrition and all that stuff does help vagal tone. It does. But it's for some people, if they're not going to the bathroom, let's just say if they have normal formation and they go every other day to the bathroom, or maybe let's just say one time a day, that could be normal. So I don't want to pathologize that. That
Right.
can be normal. But if you're going off of like, well, what's the body capable of? Maybe the body is still holding on to stuff. And maybe it's not a digestive issue, but maybe it's anxiety,
Well, and
brain
sometimes
fog,
it's just
fatigue.
like, are we talking about, quote unquote normal, or are we talking about optimal? And like,
Optimal,
where do you
yeah.
want to be? Sometimes like, hey, what this is working, it's fine. Let's not stress about it.
Yeah.
Let's not fix what's not broken. And then sometimes it's like, I'm motivated to be optimal. I want to
Yeah.
be the best, that I can be.
Right. And I don't know if like pooping twice a day versus once is going to be like, wow, I'm no optimal now. But I mean, maybe it is for you. Maybe that's a goal for you. But I would say more than that, is that a check engine light? I would say maybe the one time a day, and then is it paired with something else other than digestion, right? Is there anxiety? Is there brain fog? Is there hormonal problems? Is there something else going on? And then also the one time a day will go to 2 whenever you've dealt with these other things, because a piece of the puzzle for that person may be poor vagal tone. So ways that we strengthen that weak nervous system. So think of it like a seesaw. The seesaw, the up part is that sympathetic fight or flight, and the parasympathetic, the resting, meaning grounding, anti-anxiety, safe, centered, digestive, gut health aspect is weak. That's the lower part of that seesaw. So how do we balance that out? Or nervous system regulation, what does that look like? There's lots of amazing tools we can bring in, but I typically start with telehealth patients to say, let's pick something active and something passive that you can stay consistent with, because it's only going to work if you're consistent with it. So something active could be breath work. It's training the vagal nerve. It's improving the vagus nerve tone. Somatic practices, we have people do EMDR, it's a type of therapy, eye movement, desensitization and reprocessing. So it's metabolizing stored stress and trauma in the body to allow the body to be more in the parasympathetic state. Journaling is another one that we have people do. Pen to paper, pencil to paper. They don't like it because people don't write anymore, and that activates the parts of the brain that are weak, because we're just scrolling on our phones and we're not actually writing something. So writing something out activates parts of the nervous system, but then what you write and the intention you write matters as well. So we call it ugly journaling. It's called journal speak. And we talk about, like, a prompt would be, what does it feel like to be me today? And really for 20 minutes, at least one time a day, journaling can be a great way to start to allow the body know that it's safe and purge this stuff that's stored in the body, back to that sort of ACE, childhood trauma, or just life trauma, or stress, the stress of the day at hand. And then that's something active, an idea of something active, but meditation, grounding, there's many things you can do. Something passive is something that you don't necessarily have to do or think about, or it's not a practice or an art or a workout, if you will. but it's something that is a device. It's some sort of wearable that is working in the background, but it's training that weak nerve. So it's called transcutaneous vagal nerve stimulation. They're devices that can go on your ear, your neck. There's ones that go on your wrist, but there are these branches, like the auricular branch of the vagus nerve. You can get pretty good direct stimulation or close to direct stimulation by wearing these devices that almost like a TENS unit or e-stim in a way is how it would feel, but it's stimulating that vagus nerve. But I see people all the time where that constipation, that bloating goes away or significantly improved when they start training the vagus nerve over time. So yeah, that's what I talked about. That's what I was referring to there.
That's fascinating. Gosh. Okay, something you brought up that I thought was worth diving into was the autoimmune disease and kind of how that is incorporated in so much of it. I find it very fascinating, that women have 80% of the autoimmune diseases out there, the diagnosis. My hypothesis and what I've heard other people talk about is it's more common for us to live out of our hormonal balance. And I think we're a little bit more delicate in that we just have more moving parts going on, where it's a little bit harder for us if we're constantly in a state of stress to move through the different phases of our cycle as we're supposed to, different hormones at different times. It's just not really widely talked about, and it's not really widely considered. And I'll let you dive into that as much as you want to. But one point that I was very interested in was hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's. So I've been diagnosed with hypothyroidism. And then I think my mother may have Hashimoto's, but Hashimoto's is more of an autoimmune disease, right? And hypothyroidism is just kind of like inefficient thyroid.
Yeah. So there's many causes of low thyroid or hypothyroidism, and the conventional mainstream model is just looking at basically, unless the patient asks for the lab, but they're just testing a TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, which is a pituitary hormone. It's a brain hormone, not a thyroid hormone. Okay. And then maybe they'll run T4. Back to my earlier statement is they're running the labs to give the pharmaceutical out. So they're just running what they need to run. So it's not like this is never an indictment of an individual doctor when we're talking about systems and paradigms.
Right.
So the system is to diagnose the disease and match it with a medication. But a functional medicine approach is going to say, okay, what does science show to cause this problem in the first place? So TSH, T4, okay, it's needed, but let's run a T3, total and free T3. That's your active thyroid hormones. They're going to run that if they have you on like a Cytomel or some sort of synthetic T3. If you have low T3 syndrome, there are some people conventionally that their doctor is running these labs. And let me just say this. I've seen the industry change tremendously over the past 15 years. Like there's more knowledge and patients and people are advocating for themselves more and more. So the conventional doctors have learned to be like, okay, this is a thing. Let's run the tests. But they're still just scratching the surface. The thyroid antibodies is what you talked about with the Hashimoto's. The thyroid peroxidase, TPO, and thyroid globulin, TGA. And it is, the American Endocrine Society says upwards of 90% of low thyroid function in the West is autoimmune in nature, and that's Hashimoto's disease or autoimmune thyroiditis, and then Graves' disease would be the other one. Those are both autoimmune. Graves' is overactive, Hashimoto's is typically underactive, but you can have both. You can have both Graves' and Hashimoto's and kind of vacillate between the two. But then we have to run what's called reverse T3, which is like the braking system of the thyroid hormone. That's just scratching the surface. And then you have to look at all the things that are interconnected that impact the thyroid hormones, like nutrients like iron and magnesium and selenium and iodine. All these things matter. And then back to gut health, 20% of the thyroid hormone is converted there. The whole point being is TSH and T4 is just looking at like the tip of the iceberg. We need to look at the full sort of breadth of the 2/3 of the iceberg that's underneath the sea that you don't see unless you run it. So
running it is like blood work?
Blood work, yeah. Predominantly, all the things I said other than the gut health is all blood tests. And these are conventional blood tests. But the interpretation of the lab matters too.
Right.
Because the lab's reference range, you know this, but for people that don't, it's based on a statistical average of people who go to labs. People that go to labs are not the healthiest group of people.
Usually.
Yeah. So there's a lot of people that intuitively know, especially women, but anybody out there, something's off here, but the labs are coming back quote unquote normal. What they're unintentionally telling that patient, that person, is you're a lot like the other people that have suboptimal health that we're comparing you to. So that's where we get our name in functional medicine. Where's the body functioning the best? We're looking at optimal, not average. So you can feel optimal, not average, and getting you there. So yes, Hashimoto's is part of it, but you could have so many different things going on. There's underconversion of T4 to T3, or what they call low T3 syndrome. 80% of the thyroid hormone is converted in the liver, so you have to look at liver health. But looking and measuring the optimal, not average, of all of these things that I just said, will look at the pattern or the mechanism of action of why that check engine light is on. Maybe why is that TSH elevated, or why the thyroid hormones are sluggish. But yeah, Hashimoto's and I think to your point, the reasons why women more than men have most autoimmune conditions is fascinating to me. The different layers of what researchers are looking at. And the estrogen and progesterone is part of that. Is like women tend to have more sophisticated, is how they term it, sophisticated immune systems. And the way that estrogen and progesterone around a menstrual cycle influences inflammation levels, those are immunomodulating hormones, estrogen and progesterone. So if you're dancing, fluctuating hormones throughout the month, that's impacting inflammation. But that's not the only piece, right? I mean, otherwise every woman would have an autoimmune condition, and that's not true. So something's changing. It's a perfect storm of variables. But yes, the hormonal piece is a part of it. I've seen studies look at what's called microchimerism, basically where a lot of women will say and know to be true their autoimmune issue happened around pregnancy. And A, hormonal shifts there. But B, there's this microchimerism where the baby, the fetal cell, didn't fully leave the body. Like remnants of the pregnancy didn't leave the body. And is the immune system sees this foreign cell that was baby, not mom's. The immune system attacks it, and that's that molecular mimicry that I talked about that happened with leaky gut syndrome can happen then. So researchers are looking at that. And then you look at the amount of products that women use in the world today that's marketed to women. Women are using so many more toxic ingredient products than men. And then the collective stress and trauma and shame that we put on women too historically. So I think it's multifactorial. I think all are interesting because they all kind of resonate to be true. This perfect storm of variables that women are up against like never before in human history. And because of that, the majority of autoimmune conditions impact women, with a few exceptions. I think ankylosing spondylitis was one that maybe men have more than women. But other than that, a few exceptions, most autoimmune conditions are predominantly women.
And how would you describe, I mean, you kind of glossed over, but how would you really describe what's going on with an autoimmune disease?
So it's when you have two main branches of the immune system, Th1 and Th2, back to sort of a seesaw. Because why is a seesaw good here is because it's balance. You need a balanced approach here, so that we talked about that with the nervous system. The immune system is similarly. So with autoimmunity, you have an overactive Th1 or an overactive Th2 or a lack of what's called T regulatory cells, which is a balancer of that immune system modulation. So what's happening here is what's called molecular mimicry. It's researchers call it like the case of mistaken identity. When the immune system sees the thyroid with Hashimoto's, sees the myelin sheath for MS, sees the gut with ulcerative colitis and Crohn's, sees the joints and the connective tissue like for lupus and rheumatoid arthritis, sees different parts of the body. There's over 100 different autoimmune conditions, but they're all the same as far as like what's different about them is where it's happening. The why it's happening is what researchers call molecular mimicry. And then the big question is that the immune system has lost recognition of self, where it's just attacking flippantly against certain parts of the body? That's sort of the conventional model, which I think there's some actually beautiful thoughts about that, because if that's happening on a physical level, think about what all the people that have lost recognition of self on a mental emotional level. Like they forgot so much. There's so much stress and shame and trauma, which is very much researched to trigger these autoimmune issues. But more interestingly, I think it's more likely that the body wants to protect us and hasn't really lost recognition of self. It's actually trying to protect you. And environmental toxins like herbicides, pesticides, microplastics, forever chemicals, heavy metals, or biotoxins like bacteria, virus, mold, parasites are in the tissue, and the body's trying to get it out to protect you. So that's what's happening. The immune system has turned And inflammation, God made inflammation. It's supposed to defend you from viruses, bacteria, environmental toxins. But then it's now attacking the tissue itself as well. That's what autoimmunity is.
So, most people, I think, when they're diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, kind of assume it's forever, right? Or
Yeah,
is that
well,
like a thing? I mean, like,
that is what they're told. Yes, that is what they're told. I would say the goal is to put into remission, because someone's still going to have the genetic predisposition for these things. That, as I mentioned, about a third of this puzzle, depending on the case that we're talking about, is genetics. So that's methylation. Like, there's almost 100% overlap between MTHFR gene variants and other methylation gene variants and things like Hashimoto's.
how do you test for that, by the way? Methylation,
Blood tests. You can actually get
through a normal
yeah,
doctor.
yeah. Any doctor, we can run it for them, but Quest or LabCorp has MTHFR. But methylation is a lot more complex than just MTHFR. So we typically use blood, but we'll also do raw gene data. We can actually get a lot of data from 23andMe and Ancestry, like the gene ancestry stuff.
Yeah.
They don't report this stuff, but we can take that raw gene data and look at it through different systems and AI to see the different gene variants that are at play here. That impacts regulation of inflammation, hormones, detox pathways. It helps us understand the 1/3, the bucket size, right? And the more single and double variants we have of these methylation, detox gene, HLA gene variants, that's the smaller bucket that you can have. So we have to look at the genetic component for these type of autoimmune issues. But more importantly is what fills up that bucket, the epigenetic stuff.
Okay. Talk to me a little bit about epigenetics. That's interesting.
Yeah, epigenetics is the lifestyle stuff. It's the things that fill up the bucket. It's the stuff we're talking about in today's conversation. But yeah, the both are important. And you can't ignore the genetic piece of the puzzle with autoimmunity. But I'm more actually interested most of the time with the epigenetic side of things.
And the epigenetic is kind of like how our predispositions are expressing themselves.
Exactly. So the analogy, like it said that genetics loads the gun, epigenetics pulls the trigger. And we all have gene variants for certain things. And that's why genetics are an important part, especially if it's being expressed and understanding someone's bioindividuality. But it can almost become, if you look at like MTHFR and other methylation gene variants, it can almost become in the health biohacking space, kind of like genetic astrology, where it's like, okay, I have a double MTHFR, like that's my rising sign, or that's just me. I'm just an MTHFR. You are more complex than any one gene variant, so it's not like this equals this, because genes aren't our destiny.
Right.
So yes, it's a piece of the puzzle. Yes, of course it downregulates things, and we have to look at maybe you have higher homocysteine level, this type of inflammation. But I see many people with gene variants, and that's not expressed at all. It's not showing up on their lab epigenetically at all.
Do you have patients that go into remission from things like lupus?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So I lost my train of thought there. So yeah, my conservative estimate for someone that has an autoimmune condition, depending on where they're at, obviously every case is different, but my goal would be to, at the very least, decrease the severity and frequency of their flares. And almost 100% of people, we can get there. Depending on how long they've been sick, depending on how much damage has been done, we want to see what the body's capable of, whether it's 50% improvement or 100% improvement. Let's start moving the needle in the positive direction. But if we're getting somebody that has, meaning it's not bone on bone, it's not lots of degenerative changes, there's not significant imaging studies being lost, and whether you're talking about different issues like MS or rheumatoid or lupus or things like that. If you have an inflammatory storm, yes, they're having flares, but their actual tissue itself is not destroyed. There's a significant confidence that I has been doing this for 16 years to start to put this thing into remission. And that doesn't mean, I would not use the word, I have to think about how I'm going to say this, because I don't want to limit what the body's capable of doing, nor I know the power of mind over matter as well. So I want the person to really have the best belief of healing to get to the other side. But my conservative, clinical mind would be to say, to put this into remission, because why I say that is they still have the gene component, and the immune system has a memory, And I wouldn't say that person could go and just go eat the standard American diet, go get exposed to tons of environmental toxins, and go get stress themselves up, go through a really stressful time just for fun, because you could reactivate something. So yes, for all intents and purposes, they're living a symptom-free, vibrant, healthy life. But when you use the word cured, it's therefore showing that the immune system is unchangeable, and that's not true.
Yeah, I love that. Is eczema an autoimmune thing?
It is not classified. It is certainly associated with autoimmune issues. It's an inflammatory problem. It's a gut-skin axis thing.
Okay.
So this is a good differentiation here, is that all autoimmune conditions are inflammatory, but not all inflammatory problems are autoimmune. Does it really matter? Is it just semantics? Because every 5 years, there's more and more health issues that are classified by conventional standards as having an autoimmune component, meaning we didn't realize it before, but there was some random cell study or randomized control trial that's found, heart disease for many people has an autoimmune component. We didn't know that 15 years ago.
I didn't know that right now.
Yeah, right. I mean, there's more and more things that you think of just as chronic degenerative. Okay, but it's inflammatory, so we don't understand the intricacies of the body. We're just scratching the surface of this stuff. So, we just need to start realizing that, and does it really matter? It's inflammatory. We need to calm it down.
Yeah.
Psoriasis is an autoimmune condition. That is different,
Okay.
but that's overtly, like, classically defined as one. Eczema, inflammatory, gut-skin axis issues, how I would describe it.
So I'd like to just share a little personal testimonial of something that I just happened by improvements in my life. But I used to have eczema on my right hand, like around my top 2 knuckles here, and I would get it here, and I would also get it on the inside of my wrist, sort of down in this area, depending on how bad it was. And I used to get it when I was in like a very toxic relationship. Used to get it really bad, and also when I was like at the most pressured point of fighting. It would, and it wasn't all the time, but I would have these flare-ups. And once I retired from the sport and I left the toxic relationship, and slowly over time, I had my 2 kids, I began making these changes, but I never had it again. I've never had it again. And I had it for years, off and on, not all the time. Just, I think when things would really get to like a boil over point, I would break out in eczema.
Yeah.
And I don't have it at all now. I feel like to me, that is a sign of healing.
Yeah, absolutely. You've improved resilience. Without that's a good way of putting it, because that's exactly how I try to tell telehealth patients. Or maybe that, depending how severe it is. Look, eczema can be very severe, but maybe it is a mild thing that they don't even remember to even mention it to me on their initial telehealth consult, and then they'll tell me months later, "Oh, I didn't even tell you this before, but I always got this random thing, or it doesn't happen anymore." That's a sign of improved resilience. That's improved fortitude in the body. We have to look, like maybe your stress levels are lower, maybe that is the case. But I would say, knowing all the things that you're doing for your health, it's a sign that these little check engine lights and the big check engine lights aren't on anymore.
Right.
Because you've dealt with underneath what's underneath the hood.
I always say that the body follows the mind.
Yeah.
And I believe that. I believe that we express sometimes with our physical symptoms, or outwardly our body is communicating in the only way that it can, because inside of our body can't just magically talk to us.
Yeah.
Right. So if things are upset in your gut and you get skin issues, sometimes that is the way that the body can let you know. That's how I interpret it. So my son, for example, he had a milk protein allergy. Now, this is not a formal diagnosis. I'll completely, disclose that. But this is how I came to believe what I'm about to tell you.
So I'm going to cough real fast.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't want to interrupt you eloquently talking and then coughing.
It's dry here. Yeah, take a sip of water.
Vegas is getting to me.
So my second child, my daughter did not have this issue. I have my son, and he's just this hot baby with runny stool that doesn't look normal to me. It's kind of yellowy tinged. It looks, maybe a bit acidic. Like and he's fussy. He's not sleeping well. Yeah. And I'm just noticing he's awfully red. He's awfully pink. You press on his skin and it's just like, you could tell that he has got this pinkness to him, and he's hot all the time. And I thought something's going on. And so I just, it was during COVID. So it's not like we were getting out much anyway. So I just Google doctored it. I was living in Singapore too. And I just said, well, okay, it seems like maybe a low-hanging fruit would be a food allergy. Okay. So I started talking to my fiance, Johnny, and he said, well, you know what? Come to think of it, I had really bad eczema. It looks a lot like how Daxton's is, right? He's starting to get, this is progressing. It's getting worse. It starts out with him being pink and a bit irritable. Now he's getting more reddish. And over, a couple of weeks, so he's getting bumps on his skin. He's getting eczema. And we're thinking, okay, a friend of mine was like, my baby had that too. I'm going to give you all this topical stuff. But something told me, I was like, okay, what, like why? Why is this going on? Okay, I'm going to try to make a long story short. He said, come to think of it, I had this too. I had the exact same thing. I was actually hospitalized because it got so bad. And he said, okay, well, we don't know why, but we do know that you had that. So chances are whatever you had, he maybe is expressing as well. Yeah. So I said, look, I'm exclusively breastfeeding. I'm going to eliminate all the things that are on the list, which was very difficult to do, by the way, in Singapore. Oh my gosh, the food options were not as, as grand as they are here. So anyways, I eliminated everything. And I started introducing things back in. It wasn't shellfish. It wasn't gluten. And then milk. The moment I introduced dairy and milk, boom, symptoms flared. I was like, okay, I think I have something here. Then the more research I did is like, it most likely what I believe was an immature digestive system. And for whatever reason, his body just didn't digest the milk proteins. And I didn't know anything about A1, A2. I don't know if A2 milk, a more easily, readily digestible form of the milk protein, could have made a difference. I don't know because I didn't try that. But either way, I had to completely remove dairy for about a year from my diet so that he wouldn't have flare-ups. We tried it again at 6 months. Nope. Tried it again at like 8-9 months. Nope. Like it immediately flared him up. But it was, what I'm saying is communication from the inside. Yeah. And it was expressed outwardly. But the problem wasn't the outward expression. It wasn't I didn't need to put lotions on his skin or medications on his skin. I needed to fix what was going on the inside. Yeah. And I can't say that I fixed it because I didn't fix it, but I narrowed it down and I eliminated the problem. And maybe there would have been a way to fix it. I don't know. I can't go back. But anyways.
Well, and the body can heal too. It's a body. You remove the trigger and then the body can heal on its own. When it's not constantly flared and irritated, you may not have to have done anything. Just live a healthy kid life. And the people, quote unquote, grow out of things all the time because the body is amazingly resilient and can
adaptation.
Repair. Yeah, exactly. It's learned. Maybe it needed proper enzymes or antibodies or repair mechanisms to shift. The microbiome shifted to digest things differently. So yeah, that's powerful. An elimination diet, what you did, is still the gold standard. I mean, there's food sensitivity testing, and we can look at that. But still, I don't even really love food sensitivity testing because you're gonna just, if you have all these foods back positive, it's not so much the food's fault, it's the immune system's overreaction to those foods. Right. So you can't just go and
be like, I'm never going to eat that stuff again.
Base your breakfast, lunch, and dinner forever on this snapshot in time, and then you just eat air and ice cubes and low lectin bark. Yeah. But it doesn't work like that. So still the gold standard is, well, if you do run a food sensitivity test and a lot of things come back positive, it's really a sign of leaky gut syndrome. And you have to repair the gut resilience and calm and support gut health over time, and then slowly work on food reintroduction as resilience is built. I would be curious to see the different types of dairy. Does he eat dairy now?
Yeah.
Fine. Interesting.
Yeah. But for even the first year or so, there were certain things and certain amount of dairy that would just seem to bother him a bit. It would change his stool. He would have more diarrhea. And I was like, oh gosh, was there a lot of dairy in that? And so that's kind of what I would always draw back to. But then, no, now he's fine. He drinks milk. He eats awesome. Yogurt. Yeah, he's no issues at all.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so cool.
So the body's, and you're doing a lot of good things at home. So it's you don't have to have it all figured out because it's just you that's the power of a mom, I think. The power of a mom is, exactly. Mom intuition. And then, better than most doctors.
That's so cool. It's nice. It's refreshing to hear a doctor say that because usually I find that the stories are quite the opposite. It's Mom, you don't know what you're talking about. You're not a doctor.
Yeah. Well, if the doctor's doing that, get a new doctor because the medical gaslighting, I mean, the amount of medical gaslighting that happens to all women, whether they're a mom or not. It happens to their health or their kids' health. It has to end, because I think that, it's just, your body and your kid's
and
body.
your child, yeah, and it's genuine. It's feedback.
Exactly, it's feedback.
They're you're trying to communicate the things that you feel like are wrong, and sometimes I feel like doctors just. And again, this is a system too. Sometimes the system doesn't allow for a long conversation.
No.
So they're trying to get what is going to suffice, or air quotes, fix, which doesn't really fix. But anyways, they're just trying to get, because that's the model. That's the way that it's set up.
Yeah. And like you said, like the steroid creams or whatever sort of ointment they would have, maybe it would be helpful, but it was not dealing with the root causes. The skin is an outer mirror of what's going on in the gut most of the time. Of course, there's skin barrier, skin mantle, like outside in things that people can do to support their skin health, but back to both and, not either or. We have to deal with both sides.
Yeah. So good. Is there anything else that you think is really interesting, or anything else that you think that people should know before I let you get out of here?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the time. I think another sort of realm of things that we see great success with when dealing with the physical and looking at food and nutrition and targeted supplements, dealing with the mental, emotional, spiritual that we talked about, and then the sort of emerging therapies that I think, if we're talking about autoimmunity, since that's kind of what we've talked a lot about, peptides are something that I think I want to see more and more people become educated on. I want more and more people to have access to it. Hopefully with time that will happen. The red tape around peptides will start to go away because I see tremendous results clinically. Things like BPC 157, TB 500, both subcutaneous and oral. But other than KPV and BPC and copper peptides, it's all going to be subcutaneous at this point, unless there's a delivery mechanism down the line. We can have it survive the stomach. But I think that somebody that's going through this autoimmune inflammation issue is to just educate themselves on this, because I've seen it be such a powerful tool. Of course, to me, it's the cherry on top, like deal with the things we've talked about through this conversation. But these sort of targeted therapeutics can be wonderful. Yeah. So that came to mind as far as people to learn more about.
That's going to be part 2 when we do another podcast together. I'm gonna kick off with that, because I think hopefully there'll be even more information out there, and I am interested definitely in what peptides have to offer. Okay, closing remarks. If somebody is just looking to get started, if they say like, "Gosh, I think there's something here for me," what do you think is the best way, or a way that somebody could kind of just get started in the right direction?
Start with the foods. Like, of course, stress, trauma, environmental toxins have to be looked at and can be quantified on labs or through health history. But if you're saying, okay, I don't have a lab, I'm not looking at environmental toxins right now, or mold, bacteria, viruses, I'm just going to be looking at what can I do with my next meal or my next day. What I would say is cut out the inflammatory core 4 if you haven't. So that's the 4 food ingredients that are most likely to drive inflammation and impact that gut immune axis. Gluten-containing grains would be, this is in no particular order, so I don't come at me in the comments here, but gluten is going to be one thing. Now, is it the gluten, or is it what we've done to it? I think it's more of what we've done to it. We've hybridized it and we've sprayed it with herbicides and pesticides. It's not like the ancient grain that was consumed for thousands of years.
Do you eat grains?
I do. Okay. I do sourdough, but I know people that can't do sourdough. But I'll do like organic sourdough, and I do fine. It's not the bulk of my caloric intake, but it's something I have. Like, I'll have a sourdough pizza and I'm fine with it. But it was historically a food that would be stored well during times of famine. Now we're feasting on a famine food and not properly preparing it, spraying with tons of stuff.
Right.
We're not soaking and sprouting it, fermenting it. So it's a very inflammatory food, the way that it's served and grown, treated today. So all of this is predicated on this mismatch that I talked about earlier, this epigenetic genetic mismatch. But gluten-containing grains, there's better for you versions to every single one of these things. But like an organic, sprouted, fermented grain, or a gluten-free grain for someone that's really gluten sensitive. But is it the gluten, or is it what we've done to it? Right. Second would be industrial seed oils, which is more controversial, but I see the science around it as being problematic. in ultra processed foods. It's part of the puzzle problem there. But then it's over the overconsumption of these high omega-6 fatty acids. These polyunsaturated fatty acids in proper ratio are all fine. Like vegetable oil in vegetables in its whole food form is fine. But that's not what people are cooking their dang food in. But this the 369, the omega 369 ratio to maintain cellular health and inflammation, balance inflammation is important. The modern Western diet is very high in omega-6, very low in omega-3. On top of that, the hexane chemical solvents and things like that.
I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but you just said, when you say vegetable oils, I always thought that was funny because is it that even technically coming from a vegetable oil? Because I feel like a lot of times like canola, it's like canola stuff. I was like, where is the vegetable? Like what oil is even in a vegetable? Like
so different
avocados are not vegetables. Avocados are fruit. So it's like, anyways.
It's probably a combination.
It's another misleading term.
Well, there's no canola plant either, right? It's like a rapeseed. It's just, but it was like branding problem because it was like rapeseed just sounded bad.
I just wanted to make it sound so good.
Yeah, it's Canada oil. It's canola oil.
Yeah.
So it's just branding. These things are industrial seed oils. And yeah.
Why do you think avocado and olive oil are more healthy versions? I feel like people are like, oh, I can have these ones or coconut oil, but like.
It's the fatty acid profile.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the fatty acid profile. So all those are different fatty acids, but a combination of monounsaturated, saturated, and stable polyunsaturated fatty acids. And then the temperature of which you're cooking these things, or is it room temperature, matters too. Because some of these polyunsaturated basically all polyunsaturated fatty acid bonds, their smoke point isn't going to be really high. And how refined something is determines that too, with how many these polyphenols.
Thank you for breaking that down. Because I've always seen seed oils vilified, and then there are these other oils, and I'm like, well, why are these ones? Why are they better?
It's the carbon bonds. It's the saturated. It's the fatty acid bond. So depending on, you can make a good oil inflammatory by cooking it too high. Like olive oil is a good example. Like extra virgin olive oil with all the amazing polyphenols, wonderful. No one's going to deny that. But cooking it at high temperature is not going to be a good idea.
Yeah.
So it's the polyunsaturated fatty acids, which are going to be the industrial seed oils and then fish oil, are the problems, and they're all delicate to heat and light and time. So just like with fish oil, you have to make sure it's not rancid. You don't want to make sure those seed oils like canola oil, vegetable oil, soybean oil are rancid either. But I think the truth is oftentimes somewhere in the middle for many things within nutrition and life itself.
Yes.
So I don't think that you should like demonize all seed oils and say, well, put them in one category and say equals bad. Because you could get like an organic, cold pressed sunflower oil, and in small amounts, because you're eating so many other good things, is it really going to be a big deal?
Yeah.
Like, don't become obsessive about this stuff and orthorexic. But third would be conventional dairy, which you mentioned with your son. Like, is it the dairy? Is it what we've done to it? Like you said, we've homogenized it, pasteurized it. We feed the cows grain, not grass. We're not fermenting it. So there's a lot of reasons why dairy is problematic today, and there's better for you versions to dairy. And then fourth would be added sugar, but most people know that. Most people are over-consuming sugar. But even the nice-sounding euphemisms for sugar that's greenwashed in sort of the health world, just become label literate. Any gram of added sugar, but agave nectar comes to mind, where it's like, okay, maybe it's better than cane, maybe not. It's still high fructose. It's not having the fiber in its whole food form. And if you're having 300 grams of agave nectar because of all these treats and things or drinks that you're drinking that are quote unquote natural, it's still a lot of sugar.
Yeah.
So become label literate and look at the grams of added sugar.
Do you consider raw natural honey as added sugar?
I do. It does behave differently, and I deal with people that have a lot of food sensitivity issues and metabolic problems. Manuka honey is one of my favorite foods in the world for people to support their immune system, their gut health, heal wounds, even topically. But if someone's like eating the Winnie the Pooh diet, like having like 600 pounds of honey, there might be an upper limit to that amazing food medicine. Try it out if you want to, for all the Pooh Bears out there.
Yeah, fair enough. I like putting honey, bone broth, and cream together, and I drink it warm and or cold, which is like my version of a coffee.
I love
Some
that.
people might be like, but hear me out. Like if you could ever eat like honey chicken, spicy honey chicken.
Yeah.
Why couldn't you have like a honey bone broth? I'm just saying
No,
conceptually.
that sounds
it's
amazing.
Like savory sweet.
I've never done it, but I'm gonna do it as soon as I get home.
It is my favorite. It's one of my favorite drinks. I make it warm in the winter. I make it cold.
How
in
much?
the summer.
Using a teaspoon, tablespoon, honey.
Of-
Honey, like how much?
I just put it in. It's probably
Like
a
to
couple.
taste?
Yeah, 2-3 tablespoons probably.
Okay,
Yeah, I
cool.
would say because I like the flavor.
Yeah,
Having
yeah.
a little bit of the sweet in there. If it's not enough sweet, then you still kind of get more of the bone brothy flavor, which I also don't mind by itself. But here's what I will say, is that this isn't if this was not good for me, if I didn't believe this was healthy for me, it's not a drink that I'd be like, oh my gosh, I just love this because it's just like the most amazing thing I've ever had. I mean, it's not a can of grape soda, okay? But because I believe this is good for
I love
me.
that you were keeping it real though for the people.
Yeah, let's keep it real. I mean,
sell it
because I know that this is a healthy choice for me, I love it. I love it because I feel like I'm choosing myself.
Yeah.
And because it does taste good to me. It's just not like, it's not a milkshake. It's not, but it's good. I mean, I use whole cream. I put the honey in there and I fill it up with warm bone broth. And I'm like, this is like sometimes I'll put some adaptogens in there or like a mushroom coffee. I'm not really a coffee drinker, but sometimes I'll put like a tiny bit of that just to give it a little bit of that flavor and just kind of,
hey,
I enjoy it.
You should market that. Some honey bone broth.
$1 million idea.
Yeah. I mean,
okay. I'm going to wait to release this podcast now.
Yeah, no one take it.
This.
She owns it. It's trademarked.
It's good, though. You should try it. Definitely.
Yeah, I will.
It's a good way to get protein in the morning. So,
yeah.
Well, thank you so much. This is fantastic. You are so great. And I'm really looking forward. We are going to record. I'm going to be on your podcast.
Yeah.
So it's going to be fun. So we're going to do that. And everybody listen. Could you give where people could find you and also list your books?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. So all the information about the telehealth consult lab stuff, the podcast called The Art of Being Well, the books, I have Ketotarian, The Inflammation Spectrum, Intuitive Fasting, and Gut Feelings. It's tons of free resources. I write an article about every week, put all the links to the research. Everything's at drwillcole.com, drwillcole.com.
You are awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much.